Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Little Perspective. This is your host, Nikhil, and this is the host, Pranav. And today we have a very special guest, Peter. How are you doing today, Peter?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here. Good morning.
That's awesome. So Peter, just to give you like a brief, like how we function in this podcast, we'll get you to like introduce yourself, and we'll move on to the podcast itself, the conversation,
Okay.
and then we'll end it with like a rapid fire round.
Right. Good fun. All right.
It'll be a good round.
I like rapid fire.
100%.
So we'll ask you 6 questions in total.
Yeah.
3 from him, 3 from myself.
Okay.
And you have to answer in 1 word or 1 sentence.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right.
I wish there was a hamper at the end,
Yeah.
but sorry about that.
Perfect.
There's a buzzer that goes off if I try to talk too long.
Well, we can have the person behind the camera do it. Awesome.
All right. Sounds
so
good.
why don't we get the ball rolling by you
Okay.
telling us a bit about yourself, so everybody's on the same page.
Okay, so Peter Mayne, that's always a good place to start. I have
Totally.
a name and that is it. So I'm a lifelong Regina guy. I'm born and raised here. I moved away for a year when I started my career in radio. But I don't know. Why don't I tell you a little bit about kind of just quick career arc so
For sure.
people kind of know, what I'm about.
For sure.
I've got a degree in journalism from the U of R. That's how I started my career in radio. So it's kind of nice to be back in the environment of audio. And worked in radio for about 6-7 years. Quickly discovered there was not a path to fame and riches working in radio. It was a dying art, a lot of that, and moved on into communications, organizational communications. At the Ministry of Health, then Farm Credit Canada, moved into HR, and now I work in corporate strategy. I'm the Vice President of Strategy at Conexus Credit Union, let's see, what is it now? The 14th largest credit union in Canada, based here in Saskatchewan. And that's kind of the professional side. Personally, I've got a wife. Her name is Karen. She's an accountant, although I guess she's the CFO at Group Medical Services, GMS.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, and a daughter who lives in Saskatoon, who was just he's down in Regina right now, was just over yesterday, so pretty awesome. I don't know, that's the basic deets, and we'll see where we go from there.
So you've got a pretty wild run from like radio to like media and communications, and now like VP corporate strategy. So 3 different career jumps.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
I've been thinking a lot about that lately because you can probably tell from the color of my hair. I'm in the 4th quarter of my career, and it's a time when you start to get a little more, introspective about, hey, what's the journey been all about? And I think there's a couple of different ways you can come at building a career, and my wife's a great example. She's gone deep. Like, she's been in finance her whole career, and she's really good at it, and she's got a lot of depth of knowledge. And that's awesome. And I don't know, for me, I decided to go wide, breadth. So to try a lot of different things. And so I think, as I reflect on it, it's just kind of very much integral to who I am. This desire to try new things and learn new things, and kind of getting bored and saying, okay, what can I jump into next that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. So moving from radio into like public relations. So I basically did PR, speech writing, media relations, issue management, crisis communications, marketing, all that stuff for the Ministry of Health. And there's overlap with media. And so I find being able to move from sort of one career to the next, how does it work? Like, you can either switch professions, or you can switch, the type of company you work for. So, if you're an accountant, you can go from accounting for a football team to accounting for a hospital. Mm-hmm. You're still in accounting, but you've switched kind of industries. Or you can switch from, accounting to marketing in a totally different industry. That's like a huge jump. So if you just kind of either change your profession or your industry at one time, it's not as huge of a jump. And so, going
Right.
from Media into communications, yeah, okay, that was a learning curve for sure. Going from radio into provincial government, that was a big jump. And then moving from there into Farm Credit Canada, all of a sudden I'm working in a federal crown corporation, that's a financial institution. That was a big learning curve, but I was still in communications, so I had that carryover. But this whole last move, where I moved to Conexus 4 years ago, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily want to do that in the fourth quarter of their career, because I'd been at Farm Credit for 17 years. And it's a great place to work, it's like people want to be there. And I just found I wasn't growing and learning anymore. I'd kind of pigeonholed myself into the role that I was in. And this role came up at Conexus. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about credit unions. I don't know anyone basically at Conexus. And I've never done corporate strategy before. Perfect. It's kind of scary, but I find that also exciting to just have to jump in and figure something out, knowing that I'm probably not going to fail, and it's going to be some hard work and a little bit of conscious incompetence to start, but I felt I could get there.
Right.
Yeah.
So starting off in PR, in journalism, there's a huge role of communication, right? And presenting yourself. Yeah. So those skills that you learned in those 5-6 years, have they helped you in your later career?
Yeah, I do think that journalism, and in particular radio, has been hugely helpful in helping kind of shape my ability to put together ideas. And here's what's unique about radio is it moves fast. Like back in the day when radio, there was a newscast every hour.
Right.
And news is happening. You got to go out, figure out what's happening, get it into a sort of a digestible format, and get it on the air as quickly as possible. So it requires you to think fast, and it requires you to take a lot of information and boil it down into 30 seconds. Because we're attention our attention spans are horrible now. But even then in radio, if it didn't fit into 30 seconds, then it was too long. So I think, being able to synthesize and summarize and really boil down information to its essence, and then also with radio, being able to tell a story in a compelling, interesting way, I think those are skills that I learned that, really, really have served me well as I got into speech writing, as I got into, writing news releases, writing feature stories, even developing a strategy and the story behind the strategy. Those storytelling and information synthesis skills really come in handy.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of storytelling, what's the most crazy story you've had to cover in journalism, or like that you know about radio? Because there's some wild stuff happening out there.
Yeah. There was often just random stuff like, we have a police scanner in the newsroom, and it's like, there's a drug bust going down at this address. Get out there and call us as soon as you get there, and you're going to be on the air live. And you're like, they're bringing a person out the front door on a stretcher. But no, I think, the one that strikes my mind, so there's this First Nation out in the southeast part of the province near Kenosha. I can't remember off the top of my head, but this was early in the days when gambling and casinos were still kind of in their infancy in Saskatchewan. And so they were asserting their Indigenous rights, and they opened up their own casino, in defiance of the provincial government and the laws. And so there was kind of this standoff. And so all us media people, we drove out to, it was the White Bear Reserve, actually.
Okay.
And we staked out this situation. So we thought, man, there's going to be fireworks. And, sure enough, the RCMP waited until we all got bored and we ran out of budget, and we got called back. And then in the dead of the night at 2 a.m., they moved in with like their ballistic vests and guns and everything, and took down this whole, in their minds, illegal gambling operation. So, again, what fascinated me about media was just the variety. Like I'd be covering a Saskatchewan Rough Rider game, and then I'd be covering a murder trial, and then I'd be out, at a drug bust or covering question period at the legislature. So, it's just, again, the variety of all the stuff I had to learn and get my hands on was pretty cool.
So did you go to the murder sites to cover the news, or did you just got the news and you have to speak it on the radio?
Yeah, like you'd be on the periphery sometimes of crime scenes because you're trying to get the information as quickly as you can. So you'd hear something was going on, and like you see on TV, the media would be kind of outside, being trying to get some information. And yeah, quite often then someone from the police, a spokesperson, would come out and give a briefing, and then you'd go away. But yeah, they kind of kept you far away from the actual the messy stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
So do you miss like that aspect of your life? Because it seems like pretty interesting. Like it probably made you like a really versatile person, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like from murder sites to like Rough Rider games.
Yeah. I enjoyed the variety, and there was something in being a journalist. If you've got a little bit of inner gossip in you, it's like, hey man, I know this stuff before anybody else, right? And you get to like tell the story to other people, and you get to share the information before other people knew it. So
you're waking your wife up at 2 a.m. Look what I've
found. Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, guess what I know? So there was some really fascinating stuff. I mean, the practicalities of working in the media, though, was like the pay was horrible, and radio in particular was a declining industry. Like radio news is basically non-existent on most stations now. So it exciting, and I think for a young person, starting out, you get to learn a lot, get exposed to stuff, and then it's after a few years you're like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm ready to move on and get another job.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like you're getting one in Conexus.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good job.
Totally.
That means you're still young.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, objectively, I'm not, but I feel pretty young.
Yeah.
Like I do. I think, there's a lot you can do to kind of keep yourself young and fresh and experiencing new things. And yeah, you can either give in to kind of being older, or you can decide to not be old. It's kind of how it works.
I remember you were mentioning about this in like our first pre-podcast meeting too, that you do like these cross-country bikes. So you did that like when in Spain too, no?
Yeah. When I sit back and think about the best days in my life,
right?
They're one of those bike trips is totally. It. So it was the first one we did, actually. It was in Belgium, this particular one. Mm-hmm. And so my wife's great for saying, hey, honey, we should try this.
Yeah.
So we used to have a little phrase between us. It was like, okay, honey, what's the next big thing? Because it was like, oh, we're going to flip houses. We're going to run a marathon. We're going to cycle in a foreign country. So this is one, I don't know. Actually, I was working out with a guy at level 10, Derwin Arnstead. I used to work with him at Farm Credit too. And he was talking about, he went on this bike and barge trip. I'm like, what the heck is a bike and barge trip?
Right.
So that's in the Netherlands. And basically you barge down the river on this boat at nighttime. And then in the morning, you get off the boat, it docks with bikes, and you cycle around the countryside and you see things. And then at night, you get back on the boat to eat and sleep. I'm like, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And so we did a version of that in Belgium where, basically you're riding, 60 to 80 kilometers a day. You're seeing a ton of stuff because you're on a bike. It's like low and slow. It's a perfect speed and way to see a country. But we did this first trip in Belgium, and Karen, that's my wife,
right.
She and I had never been on a bike for longer than 15 kilometers. That's 15.
Right.
And we're like, well, how hard could it be? We're fit people. We can do this. So we got into Belgium, and the first full day of riding was like 75 kilometers from Bruges to, I think it was Ostend on the North Sea. And by the way, the skies opened up and it rained all day and it was freezing out. So we're like riding these bikes. We've never been on a bike longer than 15 kilometers. We got to cover 75. It's pouring rain. We're cold. Our legs hurt. Our asses hurt. Like if you ever sat on a bike for several hours, there's these thing called sit bones that get built up in your butt. And if you're not used to it, then it really hurts. But you know what? That was one of the best days of my life. it was happiness, because I was exploring, I was trying something hard and being successful. I was with my wife doing it. I was meeting new people, because they put you together. Like, whoever signs up for this tour, you're a group and you got a tour guide. And so you're riding around with new people, you're learning stuff, you're trying something hard, you're learning. It was awesome. I remember we rolled into this little town near the North Sea, and we stopped for lunch, and we all came into this restaurant, and we're taking off these dripping coats, water all over the floor. And we ordered these, I don't know, croque monsieur, croque madame. It's like toast with cheese and eggs and ham on it, all melted. And it was like, man, this is one of the best meals ever. So I don't know.
I feel like, especially after biking that long.
Yeah, there's just, so there's something encoded in all that. It's like, okay, as a human, you need to figure out like what brings you to life. Like what lights your spark. And in there's a whole bunch of things, obviously, that light my spark, because that day and the days that followed, as we continue to cycle around and learn First World War history and see, the poppies growing wild in the fields, in Flanders fields, and where the poison gas attacks happened. Mm-hmm. And you could just imagine, being a 18, 19-year-old kid from France or Canada or whatever, being out there. There was one morning where the mist hung heavy over the Belgian plain, as it were, and our guide's like, you see that stand of trees way in the distance? So imagine you're a young soldier, you're out there, you're far from home, you're walking with your gun and your helmet, and at any time, like, bullets could ring out. You don't know where the enemy is, and you're like scared. And it was just so atmospheric to sit and think about that. And we've living in Canada, people born when I was born or later, you didn't have to live with that kind of stuff. You didn't know that kind of fear, that kind of existential threat. And so it was a really kind of powerful moment to sit and think about that.
I feel like it's a privilege that people just don't really pay attention to or take for granted, that you're born in like a certain place, but if you look at it from like a wide angle perspective, there's like many countries that don't even get to have like a proper night of sleep, let alone meals and stuff. Like they just like get shot when like at any given moment of time.
Yeah, it's just hard for us to imagine that if you don't live that.
Right.
We were in Ypres in Belgium, and they were telling us, how all the buildings had been destroyed with bombs, and they all had to be rebuilt. And we were thinking, we've never, in Canada here, like we've never had bombs fall on us, and any of that stuff.
So my question to you is, like, you mentioned like these things bring you to life. If you had to like answer that in one word, what does bring you to life?
Learning.
Yeah.
Like just kind of not necessarily pressing my edge all the time, but just being curious. I guess curiosity. Let me put it that way. I think that's the word.
That's like his favorite word.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're dead if you're not curious anymore. Then what the hell are you doing? You're going through life sleepwalking, and if you're not open to, all the wonders that the world and other people have to offer, it's like, call it in. You're done. Curiosity. It gets us out of bed every morning. It makes it worth. Like I always say to my wife, like, I've been working a lot of years, and I still enjoy going to work. Okay, we'll say 9 out of every 10 days. Some days, but I enjoy going to work because there's the opportunity to learn something new, and so it's I think it's just staying curious and being open to learning and growing.
I feel like as humans, we are born to explore. Like, if we didn't explore our ancestors, we wouldn't have evolved, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this book that I'm reading. It's called *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari.
I have heard of that. I haven't read it. Yeah,
it's an amazing book. So it basically talks about the whole human history, that how we had Neanderthals, Homo erectus, and how Homo sapiens evolved. So there's one thing that I'm very fascinated about is the Australian island was never touched by any human species, not even the Homo erectus, not the Neanderthals.
Okay.
Homo sapiens were the first to step in there.
Okay.
And Australia had huge megafaunas. Like, there were sloths that weighed 8 tons. They were rodents that were the size of a bear.
Yeah.
And we fought all of them.
Yeah.
We annihilated all of that.
Yeah.
Just because some of the Homo sapiens were curious to swim all the way to to Australian island, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just fascinates me, like how powerful we are.
Yeah, there is something about the human condition. You're right. Just that desire to explore and expand our frontiers. I mean, it hasn't always been great, colonialism and all that stuff. But
right.
but I mean, putting that aside, I think about, so in the context of where we are here on the prairies in Saskatchewan, the original settlers, not the original settlers, but the white settlers from Europe who came here, you think about, man, the courage and the grit it took to basically go on a wagon across this wide open prairie under the heat or the snow or whatever, and you get to where you're going to settle, and it's nothing but a bald prairie. Oh, you got to build a house out of sod, and just the conditions and the challenges of survival. And I mean, again, we know nothing about that here these days, but like, wow. But that was it, the whole exploration thing. And so, yeah, I think curiosity is a big deal.
Totally. And you mentioned at the start of this podcast too that the feeling of being bored and then trying something new out.
Yeah.
What's your definition of being bored?
Yeah, I'll put it in the context of when I was at the Ministry of Health. It's like, oh, same thing over year after year. Like, oh, the budget's coming down. I need to write a speech for that. Or, this event's coming. So it's kind of like, oh, I know how to do this already. I'm going to do the same thing over and over, day after day, week after week, year after year. Then it's like, oh, well, then what am I learning? And so that turns into kind of boredom then, because what's left to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you break that cycle? Because you see a lot of people that are willing to be in that aspect of their life that even if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, they're completely fine with it.
Yeah.
But when you mention that's the killer of curiosity and the killer of learning and growing. So what would you tell a person who's having a conversation with you, trying to negate that? No, I find that cool.
Yeah. And I should say, if that's your jam, that's right. Cool. Not everybody's the same, and that's kind of what's okay. Some people, they get their comfort from kind of, the routine and similarity and knowing what they're doing, and they get their joy from elsewhere in life. But I think if you're one of those people who is, in a routine and not learning because of fear, then that's a different thing. And that's something I've had to learn and work with, to care a whole lot less of what other people think of me. And boy, that's something I think all of us as humans need to reflect on. I mean, we are really wired to care a whole lot about what other people think of us. And the problem with that is then, you get wired into, well, I don't want to look bad. I don't want people to judge me. I don't want to look incompetent. And I think that fear gets in the way of people, putting themselves out there and trying something different. So I think just being able to, I don't know, I remember reading this book years ago. It's just a funny little book. It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Okay.
And it's a metaphor, right? And it's about mice and cheese, and the maze changes, and it's a metaphor about change and our ability to adapt to change. But the line that stuck with me out of that book was, what would you do if you didn't have to be afraid? So if you took fear out of the picture, what would you do? And I think that's a powerful question, because so much of the things we may want to do in life, we don't do because we're afraid of looking bad, failing, being judged by others. What would you do if you didn't have to be afraid?
How big would you dream if you knew you couldn't fail?
Yeah, that's true as well. We were talking earlier, when we met about, running a marathon, and, it's a, I don't know, I was going to say it's a small thing, but it's not a small thing. It takes time and effort. But, my wife, next big thing, wife, That was one of her things. This is 20 years ago, but she's like, we're going to join this Joints in Motion program, which was a program offered by the Arthritis Society. And, basically they say you need to raise $10,000 for arthritis. And when you do that, we will train you to run a marathon, and then we'll fly you to a marathon of your, there's a number you can choose from. In our case, it was Honolulu. And and you'll run the race. So great. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, that means I got to put myself out there to ask for money from other people, which I hated doing. I still don't really like doing, because, there's a vulnerability in that. You're putting yourself out there and saying, would you help me? And, that can be tough, to be vulnerable and ask for other people's help. But we got through that, and we ran a bunch of different fundraisers, and we raised the money. And then the other fear thing was, like, we didn't know anything about running a marathon. Again, we'd never run before, other than running to catch a bus, or I played sports, right? So I'd run, but this whole notion of 1 foot in front of the other, mile after mile, distance running, we'd never done any of that stuff before. But again, she's like, no, we can figure this out. And so, but you hear these horror stories, everybody's got a story about marathons and about, I knew, this guy, his cousin Sally, she ran in a marathon and she pushed it too hard. And what's the phrase they use? She bonked. Basically, it's hitting the wall. You push your body too hard, your body shuts down. And so as the story goes, cousin Sally collapsed in a heap on the side of the road, and in her own bodily fluids.
Oh, damn. Oh, my God.
And it's like, oh, my God, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
So, it's like, I'm not sure I want to do this. But like anything in life, with a little bit of information and a little bit of like understanding what you're getting into and relying on experts. So we got the program provided us with a running guide. Great guy named Doug McKenzie, who I actually played rugby with back in the day.
Oh, wow.
He trained us for like 20 weeks or whatever. And again, you start small. So you start by running 3 kilometers. You don't even run. You do half walking, half running. You build your body up. You get used to it. Then you're doing 5. Then you're doing 10. You're gradually building up and acclimating your body and its ability to handle the load. And next thing you know, you can run 26 miles and be upright and smiling, as they say.
Right.
So,
and not getting bonked.
Yeah, not getting bonked.
Did you get bonked?
Nah. I think that rarely happens when you get right down to it. Right. As long as you train and you manage yourself properly and you get the fluids, and you're going to be just fine. But that's just an example, of if you kind of just don't worry about fear and don't get me wrong, I'm not a massive risk taker. Hey, I work for a bank, a credit union, so I'm very familiar with the concept of risk appetite.
Right.
But this is what I've learned from being in strategy. There's a really tight connection between opportunity and risk. And so basically, when you're designing a strategy, you're saying, hey, I want to achieve something. Like, I'm going to try and create value for people and improve their lives and run a successful company. But if you want to achieve something, you got to take risk to achieve it. And so there's that relationship between opportunity and risk. And I don't take reckless risks in my life. I'm willing to, my life motto might be, let's just try that.
Right.
But within reason, calculated risk. And like, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, because it keeps me learning. It's interesting. It's fun. I get to learn something new, meet new people. That's cool. But, I'm not doing stupid things, reckless things either, right?
So how far does your risk appetite go? Like, what's the next big thing that you guys have on your list?
Yeah, so we were talking about going on a hiking trip. So that'd be something different. We've done biking, we've done running,
right?
Hiking. So there's a lot of these great hiking. So here's the one my wife really wants to do. This is her next big thing.
Okay.
It's in the mountains in Europe, and you've got Mont Blanc, which is one of the tallest mountains in Europe. And around Mont Blanc, there's all these little baby mountains. And so the hike is 16 days long.
Whoa.
And it takes you through Italy, Switzerland, and France. And you're staying in little mountain chalets at night. And I said, okay, honey, but this is going to require some training and preparation. You can't just, throw on your hiking boots and walk in the mountains, 20 kilometers a day or whatever it is, without some preparation. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's going to be kind of the next big thing. But I think you have to be really conscious of what are those things you are unwilling to put at risk in your life. Your relationships, kind of your financial security. Like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I've never started a business. I'm not sure I've got entrepreneurial bones in my body. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's my thing to put your whole life savings, your whole everything at risk in pursuit of an entrepreneurial dream to start a business. And like, God bless people who do that, because that's kind of what makes our economy run, is people being willing to put themselves out there as an entrepreneur.
Which is funny, like your company is actually making entrepreneurs at the same time too, right? Like the cultivator.
Yeah.
It's basically producing such amazing tech startups.
Yeah.
So how do you see like that combination? Like, so you mentioned like, you don't have like those entrepreneurial bones in your body, mm-hmm. but still working with those people. What's like the big learning you've gotten from them? Even though it's not about starting your own business, but there's probably has to be some skills or like something like a learning thing you took from them.
Yeah. I have a lot of admiration for the folks in the cultivator, and it's one of the reasons I joined Conexus, because banks and credit unions aren't inherently exciting, but when I look at the energy that's created, out of that cultivator piece of Conexus, it's really cool. And so when I look at that, I think without a doubt there's a lot of passion there that people have when they're growing a business. Passion, long hours, sacrifice, but they believe in something that they're bringing to life, and they believe that they can create value for people, and they believe that they're making something better, out there. And I think it takes all types of people, and so a credit union needs people who are focused on risk and the numbers and like not getting out too far over our skis and all that. And then we need people who are like dreamers and have a big idea and want to focus and create that big idea. But I think, entrepreneurs need to really have a practical side too, because you can't just dream a foolish dream. You got to be able to do the work and run the numbers and build the plans and find a way to bring it to life. But yeah, it's fascinating to me.
So our podcast runs on the idea of storytelling, mm-hmm. and we believe in the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
And you're a great storyteller, we can tell, right? So growing up, is there any story that you always related to, that you always felt inspired by?
Boy, yeah, that's a tough question. I'm drawing a blank on that one for now. Let's come back to that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
100%.
That's tough, man. Growing up.
Yeah.
Did you have any story, Pranav?
Yeah. You tell us.
I'm growing up right now. The thing is, I'm still growing up though.
We'll see if that sparks something for me.
Any stories? We'll come back to that one. No, I'm not too sure.
Nikhil, you asked the toughest questions.
What about you? We'll circle back to you. You probably have something.
Yeah, I mean, one of the stories that I really relate to is related to war.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by World War II, especially.
Yeah.
And so there was this girl named Anne Frank.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I read this book called The Diary of a Young Girl. Mm-hmm. And just to put things in perspective, Anne Frank is just a regular girl who lives in the Andes, who's hiding from Nazis. Mm-hmm. She's not a president of any country. Isn't a soldier. She's not a celebrity. Nothing. Mm-hmm. She's just a regular girl who wrote his diary. 100 years later, she's admired. Why? It's just of a story. Mm-hmm. The story she has. That, even living in those hard times, she didn't see sunlight for years. Like she doesn't know what the outside world feels like, right?
Yeah.
But still having the courage to say, you know what, no matter what's happening outside, I still believe that people are good.
Yeah.
And that fascinates me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something how that is such an enduring, story. And people, you go to Anne Frank House, when you're there, you go to Anne Frank House because, that's a good example.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that question,
I
guess.
Come back, man. You stumped us with that one. You could just see us grind to a halt.
It got me thinking too. I'm like, damn.
But yeah, I'm very fascinated by what happened in those 1914 to 1945.
Yeah.
Changed the world, actually. All these companies that are thriving right now was because of war.
Yeah.
Like, that Nutella was invented in World War II.
Oh, Nutella.
Spread?
The
Nutella spread.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's
From
crazy.
war.
Yeah.
Oh,
So when these war soldiers went out, they needed something that's handy. They needed to just carry something. So they had these macadamia nuts, and they used to make paste of those nuts mixed with chocolate. So that's why it came in.
Yeah. So, since we're talking about Conexus, I thought you guys would be interested. Again, just walking through career, I think the golden thread that kind of runs through my career, from media to communications. I worked in culture and leadership development and employee engagement strategy, and then finally corporate strategy. There's a golden thread of storytelling for sure that runs through that, because when you're in the media, obviously you're telling stories, but when you're in communications, like basically whether it's external audiences or whether it's the employee audience, again, people, you need to win the hearts and minds of people. So
Totally.
Employee communications, successful companies are companies that are able to win the hearts and minds of their people and have people who are willing to come to work and give their discretionary effort, to give their all because they believe in what they're up to. Totally. Those are the most winning companies. And when you're charged with working with leadership to tell the story of the company to the employees, that's pretty cool. And now, kind of having moved into corporate strategy, we at Conexus, we created a new strategy and launched a new purpose this year. And our purpose at Conexus is to champion every member's success for a thriving Saskatchewan. And so so the executive team with me facilitating, we came up with that. It took a while, but what I love about that and working for a credit union, which is not about profit, it's about serving our members, it's about making a difference. That purpose, I always like to break that down into 3 chunks. So first of all, it's like to champion every member's success. Well, that whole notion of being a champion for our members, it's like recognizing the 140,000 people in this province who choose to be members of Conexus. Everybody's got a hope. Everybody's got a dream. Everybody's got an aspiration for their life. They want to achieve something. And how do we kind of get in their corner and say, you know what, as your financial partner, we're going to find a way to help you out with that. We're going to find a way to make that happen, to kind of find a path to yes for you. And, every member's success, it's important. It's success, whatever's meaningful to them. Like, what does success mean in your life, and how are we going to help you get there? And then the whole idea for a thriving Saskatchewan came out of, we've been a Saskatchewan credit union for 80 years. And we're proud of this province, everybody who works at Conexus. And, Saskatchewan is one of those places that we've kind of punched above our weight. We're a scrappy overachiever as a province. And we're really starting to, you can see all the good things that are happening here. And so as part of that, as a credit union, we believe that if we help every member succeed, we end up lifting an entire province. And we make this a better place to live and raise families and work. And so I've never worked for a company whose prime motivation is profit. So I've worked for government, I've worked for crown corporations, and now I've worked for a credit union. And so what I've come to learn about myself is just how much I admire and need that kind of sense of deeper purpose at work, and that sense of why we exist as an organization beyond, making dollars for shareholders.
Right.
I mean, hey, that makes the economy run. Don't get me wrong. Like, again, going back to entrepreneurism and running companies, but my own choice is to always having worked in companies that are purpose driven and exist to make something better.
It's like the main thing is the key thing is the why. Mm-hmm. It's like how Simon Sinek says, like, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah.
Like anybody can show those bars, those graphs, the charts of how profitable a business is, like what we're gonna acquire.
Yeah.
But a person who incorporates that with a story and conveys the message through like their purpose, their vision, their mission, and then showing like the facts and the proof, that just resonates with people on such a deeper level that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It's like, why do movies, like, I love this movie called The 300.
Okay.
So I think you've probably seen that with
the Greeks.
the King Leonidas movie. Mm-hmm. The why was such a beautiful message and such a powerful message that even if the country's not on our side, or like the city of Sparta is not on our side, 300 people, just 300 strong-minded men are willing to fight an army of like 100,000, 1 million people. Yeah. Just for like that why, just for the dream.
Yeah, for an idea.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I love that movie. Like, you talk about like the whole idea of war.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about like what stories to have. I feel like that movie is like my all-time favorite. I could like rewatch it right now. I feel like I might just do. I got work. I gotta complete my projects. But I feel like once everything is done, I might watch that movie again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to add one thing to that point about that movie.
Yeah.
My favorite movie as well.
Oh yeah.
It has the perfect definition of a leader. So Leonidas, he grew up as like the strong man, was exposed to adversity. He's the leader of those 300 men, right?
Yeah.
When the 300 men were falling, right? Because at the end of the day, they are 300 against 1 million, right? Yeah. So they were losing, and they knew they were going to die.
This is going to end badly for them in the end.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But they fought well, right? And Leonidas is about to die. He's on the floor, and he has his... I don't remember the name of the character. Michael Fassbender.
Okay.
He's the one who's with him.
Yeah.
So Stelios.
Stelios.
Okay.
So Stelios, he says to Leonidas, "It was a pleasure dying on your side." And Leonidas replies, "It was a pleasure to have lived on yours." That's the perfect definition of a leader.
That's one of those goosebump moments, man.
Right. Exactly.
Right, totally. No, like I feel like that ending scene is like I know exactly what's gonna happen. I've watched it so many times.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a fresh new movie every single time that I watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I heard this somewhere. I feel like it was in an Indian movie, but I'll translate it for you. So this mother said this to her son, that you can win like a few wars when you know that you have 10,000 people behind your back.
Yeah.
But you will win every single war if those 10,000 people know that you're in front of them.
Yeah.
So that leader aspect, like if those 10,000 people believe that, okay, this guy's our leader, they'll give everything that they have for you.
Yeah.
It could be farmers. It could be like just like those crafters. They would pick up the swords and spears and fight for you. Yeah. But if you know, like, oh, I have like 10,000 people, I'm such a great leader.
Yeah.
They could like betray you, like throw down their arms and just like surrender.
Yeah.
But it's the whole perspective, like how much do you inspire? What's your why?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so magical how some people have that ability to lead. And let me ask you guys a question. So the concept of charisma, you know what I mean by that? Like, well, the Riz.
Right? Oh, that's funny.
Are people born with that, or is that something you can grow? And I don't know the right answer, but I'm curious to know what you think.
Me personally, I feel like it's both.
Yeah.
Some people are just like naturally charismatic. Like the way that they look, they use that to their advantage. The way that they talk, they use that to their advantage. But I feel like there's not a single person who can't be molded into that unless they're willing to like go through that. It's like you have to like burn yourself first.
Yeah.
to come out stronger in the end. It's like how a phoenix, like it burns into flames, and then like is reborn anew. I feel like you have to go through a lot of adversity to get to that level. Like I'll give you like the example, like we were talking before this podcast about David Goggins.
Oh yeah, okay.
So his life, abusive father, when the mom left the home, the dad that was supposed to get married to his mom died in like a murder.
Okay.
And he was 300 pounds, a roach inspector basically. So you hear all these things, and like now he's at a level where almost nobody can touch him, nobody can reach him. He's made that for himself. He wasn't born with it.
Wow.
It's like Lionel Messi. So he's like naturally gifted to play soccer. But Cristiano Ronaldo had to go through adversities and hardships and break records on records. He's not a naturally good soccer player. He's just hardworking. I feel like that charismatic aspect to it too. I feel like you can work on it if you're willing to work on it. Like nobody's gonna spoon feed you like, here, this is the riz you have to use. But if you're not willing to do it, like nobody's coming to save you. In the end, like you gotta accept this fact that you're alone. Are you willing to do it or not?
So this whole question of charisma and where does it come from? It's the topic of a book. I read it years ago, but it's kind of stuck with me. It's called The Charisma Myth. And it's kind of unpack like, this ability to inspire people. And it opens with this anecdote, and it's an anecdote, a little story I've thought about a lot over the years. And so let me see if I can remember. It's set in like 1886 in Britain. And basically you've got these two dudes who are like campaigning to become the next prime minister of Britain, which is a big deal back in 1886 because, given the geopolitical stuff of the day, like Britain controlled half the world or something like that. So whoever's the prime minister of Britain is going to be a powerful person.
Rule of the world, basically.
Yeah. So you got William Gladstone and you got Benjamin Disraeli, who were the two guys running for prime minister. And in the days leading up to the election, they both just happened to go out for dinner with the same young lady, like on two separate nights. And so naturally, the media were curious to get her impression of the two candidates. And so they asked her, what she thought of them. And so she said, when I dined with Mr. Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest person in England. But when I dined with Mr. Disraeli, I thought I was the cleverest person in England. And so what she's marking out, and by the way, Disraeli, the second guy, he ended up winning the election because he was a guy, given the way he talked to people and his presence, he made her feel like she was the most amazing, clever, intelligent, interesting person in the room, not him, right? So I think that's a big part of that kind of otherish orientation. It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about me being impressive, but it's like, how do I show up for other people so that I can make them feel, impressive, exciting, interesting, intelligent. Yeah, the star of the room. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, this is a lifelong journey.
Totally.
To try, because I think we live in a society that kind of celebrates, it's all about me, and it's a special kind of person who can really show up in a way that brings the light out of other people and helps other people feel better about themselves, having spent time with you. And it's something I aspire to, as I get older and I become a little more introspective about, who I am and who I'm becoming and how I show up for others. I think about that anecdote sometimes, and I think, how can I be a little more that type of person who helps other people feel like the star of the room. It's a good way to put it, Nikhil. So yeah, I think, so to answer my own question, is charisma, I think, some people are born with qualities for sure, but I think that deliberateness about attending to others, being genuinely interested and curious about others, that's something we can all cultivate, and it's something that can make us all more powerful, and I mean powerful with respect to our impact on other people and our ability to raise other people up.
How do you do that in like dropping subtle cues? Like say, for example, you're in like a room full of people.
Yeah.
How do you shift that energy, knowing that they're here to talk to you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I've learned over the years that just be myself. Like don't try to be something I'm not. And so I just always try to be very genuine and like we were saying before, I smile a lot. I'm a pretty content, happy person, and I like to let that just flow. And I like to talk and be involved in things that I care about, that I'm enthusiastic about. When I was at Farm Credit and I was in charge of, I was the director of culture, learning, and employee engagement, which was a really cool job. And lots of people were fascinated with what we built at Farm Credit around the culture, because it was a pretty unique culture that like helped the business grow from 8 billion to 40 billion. And so there was a lot. And so I would meet with a lot of people from outside Farm Credit to talk about what we had built. And they would always say, man, you're like so electric and energized talking about this. And I'm like, well, this is, I believe in this. And so when I talk about something that I believe in, and I'm intently curious about other people, I just find it brings out my best. And when I bring out my best, then I can be the best for other people, and I can be the best for whatever I'm trying to achieve.
Then you're not throwing on like a facade.
Yeah.
Let me like put that mask on about how I love this company, even though like deep down I'm like, okay, time to switch jobs.
Yeah. And if I feel bad for people who don't love what they do, but I know lots of people, it's just, they go to work and they do a job, but man, it's so nice to really be passionate and care about where you are and what you do. And I think this charisma myth basically said, if you like just being intently curious about other people is like a huge thing to unlocking, showing up in your best way. And so, yeah, I don't know.
So, how as humans, we are emotional beings, and our emotions drive us. If we didn't have emotions, we would be dead.
Yes.
Basically, right? No matter how much we say, oh, I'm not being emotional, I'm not being emotional.
Yeah.
Your emotions are driving you. That's the reality, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny you said that, just be genuinely interested. So there's this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah.
Dale Carnegie.
That's a classic.
Exactly. So Dale Carnegie, he expands on all these things. These are the ways to win friends, influence people.
Yeah.
But the whole gist of the book is just be genuinely interested in people. That's the whole gist, right?
Yeah.
And everybody talks about these genuineness, these soft skills that you need to have, these emotions that you need to have, right? What's like the most important emotion? Empathy, or like what's the most important emotion to connect with people, to be a good leader, to be a good storyteller?
Yeah, I think you're bang on. Like Dale Carnegie wrote that book, God, like 70 years ago or something, but it remains true to this day. Like getting out of your own space and make it, it's not about me, but it's about being there and attending to others and being interested in others. I think that just unlocks so much good, and so much that's at the foundation of being a good leader of other people. So I think, that book is so relevant. And you're right, people are emotional beings. Like you go back to Simon Sinek, you were talking earlier about the why. People make purchasing decisions based on their emotions. Like so much, like people fool themselves into thinking they pick, this isn't a Starbucks coffee, but let's say it is. Lots of people love Starbucks coffee.
Right.
And so why do people buy Starbucks? I mean, is it awesome coffee? Well, it's fine, but kind of there's lots of good coffee out there. So, what is it about holding that Starbucks cup?
The brand name.
The brand name. Good. Yeah, like you're connecting yourself. You're being part of a
cult.
A cult. You're part of something. You're connecting. And so people say they buy things for the functional benefits. They make decisions, but usually underneath it, they don't even fully realize the emotional reasons that they are choosing to align themselves with a particular brand. Yeah.
It's like, it's funny. It's like on the same topic, but I feel like how people make like those emotional decisions reminds me of like this one quote that I heard, is that people buy things they don't need with the money they don't have to impress the people they don't like.
Oh God, yeah.
It's insane, right? Like when you talk about like that like, I'm not saying like shitting on any of these brands like Apple, Starbucks, amazing brands.
Yeah.
But if you're buying it just for the sake of proving to the world that, yo, I'm part of that 1% too.
Yeah.
I feel like those are like the emotional decisions a lot of people make nowadays.
And vehicles and houses.
Yeah, exactly.
And we really, I don't know. It's kind of a sickness that we have as a society, that we need to, look a certain way, and we need to, this is again another book. We could build a library among us. Hey, we love this. This is a book a friend of mine recommended to me a little while ago, From Strength to Strength, and it's all about how to sort of navigate that back half of your life and reinvent yourself and along your strengths. But the piece I'm pointing to is, he talks about how we get addicted to money, power, pleasure, and honor. And not honor in a good way, but honor in the way of the need to be admired by other people.
They're trying to prove it to the world that, I'm relevant.
You think about how we hustle, in the pursuit of money, and not money to like attend to our needs. Like, everybody needs money to live, but money as a sign of how successful we are, and power and title and prestige, and I don't know. There's there's lots to be said about achieving and putting yourself out there, be your best, but it's this idea of like you said, needing to prove yourself to others through your material possessions and your accomplishments and your title, and needing to be admired. It's corrosive. I think it's pretty corrosive, and I don't know how we bring balance back to that.
So what's your idea on being humble? Like, you've achieved so much in your life. I feel like if you had that corrosiveness in you, you could have done so many things to like prove to the world, like, look at me, I'm Peter Mayne. Yeah. But you're so down to earth, you're so humble. Yeah. Over like these numerous years of your work, of your life. How would you explain like being humble?
I do remember a story from years ago. There's this, I think it comes from the cowboy wisdom. Oh yeah. And it's like, the minute you start to think that you're more important than other people, try ordering around someone else's dog. Oh. It's not going to work for you. Like, somebody else's dog ain't going to come when you call it. Right. He doesn't care what you think. Right. So if you start to think you're all that important, it's just a reminder that people care about, they care about their own lives. They don't care nearly as much about you as you think they care about you. And so, if you want to achieve and do great things at work, absolutely. But just recognize that 1 week after you retire and leave work, people move on. You're replaced by someone else. Like, exactly. Next person up.
Yeah. So there's this very famous line that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. Yeah. Because you can know everything in the world, but if you don't share that with people, or if you don't actually care about others, if you don't connect with others as humans, who gives a shit? You're going to die tomorrow. You'll be forgotten in one generation. Who cares about you?
Yeah. There's this little anecdote in this book I'm reading right now about this guy. He was like a really good actuary working for a company. He worked there 30 years and then he retired. And of course, he missed the accomplishment. He missed this, that was a big part of his identity. So he couldn't understand why they weren't calling him to maybe come and help out with a project. And he just happened to drop around the office like 2 weeks later to see if he could be of help. And they weren't expecting him. And so he goes there, and they're taking all his old files and all his work, and they're putting it in a dumpster because they moved on. And you can imagine how crushing that would have been to this guy, who that was his identity, like wrapped up in everything he accomplished and contributed at work. He's gone 2 weeks. They're throwing his stuff in the dumpster, and they're moving on. So you guys may have heard of the concept of kind of there's resume accomplishments and there's eulogy accomplishments. Eulogy. So eulogy, of course, being the speech someone makes about you when you're dead at your funeral, right? Okay. And so resume accomplishments like, oh, he was this, he had this title, he made this money, he built this product, he ran this company. I mean, all great. But at the end of the day, all that moves on. And people don't talk about that when you're dead at your funeral. What they talk about and what you want to be remembered for is the human stuff. Like he was a loving father, she was a loving mother and sister and daughter, and always kind, generous with her time, willing to help people out. Had that kind of spirit and that kind of personality people were drawn to. I mean, those are the eulogy attributes that I think we should spend a little more time on.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. Wow.
I think I'm going to think about this for a long time.
Yeah.
Start building more eulogy resume than the regular resume, right?
Yeah.
No, that's a really cool way to put it.
Yeah. I didn't invent that, by the way. I read that somewhere, but it's something that I think is a real thought provoker.
We'll see like another story here, like you got from somewhere, you shared it with us.
Yeah.
It's an idea.
Oh man, this is the advantage of being old. He's older. Okay, older is that
you're the wise owl in
all
those
this
stories.
stuff, man. You think you learn over the years. It all comes together into, like being able to make sense of the world and the path forward. Man, like if Peter today could talk to 20-year-old Peter, like, man, life would have been a lot easier. But that's the way we navigate life.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you this question, and we ask this as a staple question.
Okay, every so guest, I can't pass on this one.
No, you gotta think about it. Take 20 minutes, that's fine.
Yeah.
So you must have covered this a little bit in our conversation, but you know how Simon Sinek talks about this idea of a person's why. Mm-hmm. Why do you do what you do? Mm-hmm. What's your why? Like, why do you wake up in the morning? Like, what gets you going?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have been thinking about that because, I'm probably I could probably quit full-time work in the next 2-3 years if I wanted to, and so I think someone's why and your purpose tend to it can evolve over your life. So I've been thinking, what's my why now, and what's it going to be going forward? And I don't know that I have perfect words for this, but let me see if I can muddle around. I really think and I think you're landing kind of on that purpose and why when you think about like, when are those times when I felt absolutely alive? And the times I feel alive are in moments like this, where I'm sharing ideas, talking, and I do a lot of like mentorship and stuff. Like I mentor the JDC West program at the U of R. I coach there. I've mentored through the Human Resources Association, and I have a lot of time for like younger people who are maybe a little earlier in their lives trying to figure stuff out. I'm no longer about like what title can I achieve or whatever. I don't care about that stuff anymore. I'm like, kind of, how can I help other people learn and grow and spark their curiosity and help them learn something new and kind of share that wisdom, that knowledge that I've acquired over the years. So I think, that purpose, that why is like, how can I help other people learn and grow? And so I guess, I was telling you guys before, I've signed on to be a sessional lecturer at the Hill Business School in the fall, teaching Business 100. It's going to be a lot of hard work,
Register now,
man.
guys.
Yeah, register now, Tuesdays and Thursday nights.
There we go. Starting fall 2024.
But, like that is on purpose for me. That is on brand. That is my, I feel like my why is like right in there, because like being able to just engage with other people and share ideas and help them discover things they didn't know before. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm glamorizing it, but I think that's kind of what lights my fire.
That is something that needs to be glamorized.
Yeah.
I feel like, because the things that we glamorize these days with social media and stuff, it's just garbage. Put it in a good way.
Yep.
But inspiring somebody, telling stories, we grew up as, like our parents used to tell us that listen to your elders, right? That's fading away.
Yeah.
Like, because elder people, as you said, that as you get older, you have a lot of wisdom. You have a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah.
But that's just fading away. And that's something that needs to be glamorized.
Yeah.
And I think we are really appreciative of you doing that.
Yeah, there's other cultures that still do a great job of integrating the wisdom of elders. But yeah, I think in kind of our our culture here, it makes me sad how we kind of cast aside our elder folks, and we don't have time for them, and yeah, when my mom was in her final years, she ended up having to get a walker, and she didn't want to go out because she didn't want to kind of be in the way. And it's just it does make me a little sad how we do that. I don't know.
And I feel like you can be like a perfect example for like your daughter, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's the whole point of sharing these stories, like sharing these perspectives, is that whatever bothered you at some point in life, be that change for the future generation, because who else are they going to learn from? Like Nikhil and I were talking about this like last night too, that the most you learn are from like your parents, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's
one
huge.
question I just want to ask.
Yeah.
What's your most cherished memory of your mom?
Yeah,
got a little off when you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, she had a hard life, my mom. Like she struggled with depression and anxiety. And it was a struggle for her. But what I remember about her is just how damn hard she worked. Like, we were a middle-class family, just kind of struggling to, my dad was running a business, and mom, like, she did it all. She worked in a warehouse, like an office supply warehouse. And she was like 95 pounds soaking wet. Like, she's just this little tiny thing. And she worked in the warehouse with these big guys, like toting boxes and everything. And like her life was not easy. And yet she worked hard. She brought home, her paycheck. And she was always there for my sister and me. I grew up with one sister. And what's interesting to me about that too is I'm adopted. My sister and I were both adopted. So the mom and dad who raised us were our adopted parents. And so I don't know if that changes things. Like, you don't have that sort of blood connection, but it never mattered to me. Like later in life, I met my birth parents or my birth mother and family, and it's all fine. But my loyalty always was and will be to those parents who raised me, because, like good parents, they sacrificed a lot to make life good for our kids. They were always there to give us opportunities the best we could. And my grandfather too, he was part of that. So I played the piano as a kid. I studied at the Royal Conservatory of Music. I was classically trained in piano. I don't play much anymore, but he took me to piano lessons every week, helped out, and it was like my mom. She did a lot for us, and it's hard, when they get to the end, and like it's tough to see your parents get old and decline and ultimately exit the earth. Anyway, that's all I got.
Was it difficult meeting your real parents?
Yeah, I didn't meet my birth father. He passed away before this all happened. But my birth mother, she tracked me down, and it was again being on who I am. I'm inherently curious, so I'm like, oh, cool! Like I get to meet these people who I didn't know, a full sister, a half brother, all that stuff. Like to kind of meet these people, find out a little bit more about myself, and just connect, with these new people. And it was emotional. It was pretty cool. That was, oh gosh, back in 1997, I think. So quite a few years ago. And we still stay in touch, although it's tough, like we all have so many people in our lives, and you don't have that history of, growing up with that birth mother. And so it's been tough to sustain, but it was it was a powerful moment and a period of time to connect with that.
Your birth mother sounds like a very, very strong person.
Yeah, and she's just down the highway in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and
right.
Yeah, it's but that was the way the world was. She was 15 when I was born, and so you didn't keep a baby generally in those days at that age. So I was put up for adoption, and my mother, who adopted me, she always would tell me, "You were such an ugly baby." She goes, "The nurses brought you out to us and we're like, oh man, that's an ugly baby. He's so little and scrawny, but we took you home and we loved you," she would always tell me. I'm like, well, that's nice. And then they adopted my sister as well. And well, my birth mother, she ended up having another baby 2 years later. And I don't know, I guess at that point her parents were like, okay, well, if you're going to do this, then you might as well. So she ended up keeping my sister. And so, yeah, years later, I discovered I had this full sister I didn't know I had. So it was interesting stuff.
What do you have to say about life? Because, like when we got to know you at the start, we were just scratching the surface of who Peter is.
Yeah.
Talking about these things now, if you had to tell somebody like, yeah, this is life, what do you have to say to a person?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the point you were making. Like, as humans, we're built to connect. We need each other. And so I think you don't truly get to know someone until you kind of go to that next level. Like, so many of the relationships and friendships we have, especially for us as men, are what do I call it? Like activity-based friendships. You get together to play football, to golf, to do this, do that. But
do a podcast.
To do a podcast, But how often do we really like strip the layers away and get real with each other? And with how many people in our lives as are we comfortable truly being ourselves and sharing? And yeah, I'm you guys are easy to talk to, I guess, because I don't mind sharing who I am with other people, because I think that's how you reach that next level of kind of connection and being human and helping other people, do the same. And I think we need that as humans to be able to connect with each other.
Yeah.
And again, if we're not so worried about the veneer and the mask and looking perfect, the facade, if we can just kind of be our authentic selves and share our histories and our stories and what matters to us, I think we're better off as people.
I think let's end it on a powerful note.
Yeah.
We'll just switch it to the rapid fire round.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you 3
Bring
questions.
Bring it on, man.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So, and you mentioned this like and I was like, damn, he's gonna steal my question. But if you could give one piece of advice to 20-year-old Peter, what would that be?
Don't worry so much about what other people think of you. Just don't be afraid.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever heard?
Oh, God. What's the worst piece of advice you ever heard?
That people actually follow, and you see people following that, you're like, what?
Yeah. Get a social media account. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on any of that stuff. I made a choice.
And you still got a smile on your face. So
I made a choice at some point in my life not to get wrapped up in all that. And I'm happy with that.
Just to add to that. So like right now, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I make like daily inspirational videos and quotations. But I don't have internet at home right now because I'm changing my router and my phone's internet has died. Like no more data left, right?
Okay.
So I'm living 3 days without internet. The most peaceful time in my life. Like I've never felt more calm. I can't tell you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I could live this way, but the reality is different. Like we are living in different times.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I got my phone and it's with me most of the time, and connected, but just that whole social media rabbit hole, I want no part of that, because it's just, again, it feeds into that worst. It can, if you don't manage it, it can feed into that worst thing of the facade and trying to prove yourself to people and look good and
more followers.
More followers, and I think it's corrosive. It really is, and there's a reason why mental health is probably at its lowest point. Like,
all-time low.
Like you read stuff about the mental health of young people, and it's not pretty. And I think, well, gee, there's probably a pretty good causal connection there. Anyway, continue rapid firing. I'm getting down a rabbit hole here.
If you could have a conversation with anybody from the past or the present right now, alive or dead, who would it be? And what would be the conversation about?
Yeah, this is going to seem weird because we're having a podcast conversation right now, but I have a podcaster I love listening to. His name's Dr. Michael Gervais. He runs the Finding Mastery podcast, and he's just a really, like, the way he goes deep with people and unpacks stuff. I'd love to sit down and talk to Dr. Michael Gervais. He's a fascinating guy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's your favorite restaurant in Regina?
Favorite restaurant in Regina? I've just discovered this one a little while ago. It's Sylvia's Italian Cafe. It's in the basement of the old Legion downtown.
Oh,
and it's run by Sylvia.
It's
like a little it's a little piece of Europe.
Oh, wow.
We were there the other day. Her lasagna is to die for, and she's there like every night, and it's just a wonderfully sort of authentic, being run by an individual, and you can feel the love and the passion for the food.
It's like that mom's cooking, right?
Yeah, no. So Sylvia's Italian Cafe, I'd highly recommend that.
Okay, cool.
One more question.
Okay.
What are you most grateful for in your life right now?
I found an awesome wife who we get each other. It's so hard to find someone, who you can truly be best friends with and want to spend your days with. You connect on a level of values and what matters to you. And I think I am just grateful every day that I have her in my life, and well, she's going to be there
100%
for a long time.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
If there's one rule that you could create and everybody in the world had to follow it, what would that be?
Just be kinder to people. Yeah, just be kind. And I know maybe that sounds like a cliche these days, but I honestly believe if we could just chill out a little bit and stop worrying so much about ourselves and just have a little more time for other people and a little bit more kindness, things could be a lot better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation podcast, Peter. And before we part ways, any final piece of advice, any final words for our listeners or viewers that you just want to convey?
Yeah, no, I feel like I've said it all, but just be curious and be curious about the world. It's a fantastic world. Yeah, we've got some problems.
Totally.
But, when you just take the time to see the world around you and the people in it, there's a lot to learn and a lot to love. So just be open to what's right with the world.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Well,
a powerful note to end this podcast.
Yeah,
100%.
Good fun.
Pleasure talking to you.
Been an amazing time. And thank you guys for watching and being on A Little Perspective.